Good morning, everybody. I'm Meteorologist Chris Mulcahy. Great to be here on a Sunday morning. I want to cut the fat out. I just want to let everyone know here in the Carolinas because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Milton will become a hurricane. That 100% is true. If we're talking about the Florida Gulf Coast, major impacts, it's going to be a major storm, but it will not impact the Western Carolinas. I want to say that first off, foremost. I'm not going to give you a tease saying, will it impact the Carolinas? It won't. I think the impact to the Carolinas will be close to Charleston, typical flooding that they see, maybe a 1 to 3 foot storm surge. And as Joy put, people need a break from these storms. And I 100% agree, Joy. So let's get right to it. Here's a look at our rainfall forecast over the next 7 days. Florida, this is going to be a quick moving hurricane. So that means this keeps us anywhere from about 5 to 10 inches of rain. Ian was a quick moving storm. It was the storm surge that was the bigger story, and we'll get to that. But if you focus in on the rainfall, notice how there's barely anything in between here for the Charlotte area as we zoom in. Just a sliver of green along the Tennessee border. So I think you might see a little bit of rain along the upslopes, but barely anything. And then it's right along the Charleston coast. You maybe could see 1 to 2 inches of rain. So I'm not saying it's not going to impact the Carolinas completely. Still going to have a lot of rip currents along the shoreline. It'll be a major storm there. But this is Tropical Storm Milton right now. If we can bring this full. The 8 a.m. advisory, and the next one's going to be coming out very soon, will likely still keep this a tropical storm. The reason why I say that is it's going through its organization process. It's going to start to get a little bit tighter in its circulation. It's fighting a few limitations, and I'll get to that. But it did gain 10 miles per hour over 3 hours from 5 to 8, gust to 65 still. And then it's moving east at 5 miles per hour. So we have dry air all around it. That's what this yellow and orange represents. But we're still seeing a few breaks in here. Here, I'll draw some things on here. The little bit of dry air, sometimes you can have dry slots, and this happened with Helene. That is going to limit some of the development. So as some of this is starting to come in, it still breaks up. It's a general push to tighten up. I think that that's going to really take over as far as the moisture, because a hurricane literally is just a bunch of thunderstorms growing amongst each other, and then eventually, because the Coriolis effect, the spin of the earth, it allows for a hurricane to form. So it's actively feeding off the Gulf of Mexico for more thunderstorms, and that's why it's going to continue to intensify. The most recent track that we have, the most recent update, again, once I'm done with this, the new one's going to come out. Look at how big the cone is. This cone of uncertainty really has anywhere from the northern part of the Big Bend area all the way down through Fort Myer, where you have Tampa right in the middle. So don't focus in on the center, just focus on the anyone near in the red. You're going to have impacts from this, maybe heavy rain, storm surge, or the dangerous winds that could be a major status. You notice 120. Per the Saffir-Simpson scale, once it gets to 111 miles per hour, we're talking about a category 3. That is considered a major hurricane at this point. And it's right in this area, and I'll show you here in a second, that we have some of the warmest Gulf waters. Hurricanes need 80 degrees plus on the Atlantic, the Caribbean, wherever it forms, in order to continue its further development. Once it's cooler than that, it struggle buses a little bit. Once you get to 85, that's cooking. That's absolute jet fuel for some of these. And it's right in the zone where you see that 120 right there. That's where Helene hit its greatest intensification. So even though we don't have a line technically between the 2 a.m. to 2 a.m. here, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about 130, which would be around category 4 strength at landfall. There's some limitations. I think best case scenario here is that it breaks up a little bit. Wind shear kind of destroys it. Doesn't get that tight eye wall. And then maybe it's closer to category 2 around 100 miles per hour. But I think the worst case scenario is about 130 plus. So a lot can still change. We're just kind of showing you what I'm seeing right now. This is a major story, but again, I'm going to double down here. Not for North Carolina that doesn't need any more plagues like this. What weakens a tropical cyclone? Well, always here to raise your weather IQ, right? Well, we went through wind shear. Landfall, of course, is going to destroy it because it doesn't have the Atlantic to drink off of, or the Gulf of Mexico in this case, and dry air. So we have dry air right now, but you're also going to have a little bit of wind shear action. Warm waters are definitely going to be its main driving point. And right now it's originating waters that are close to 86 degrees. And that's been the big problem that we've seen with some of these Gulf storms, that the Gulf of Mexico is breaking records for how warm it's been in recent years. So compared to when Katrina was out there, we're seeing some warmer temperatures there. That once it gets a little bit closer to the Florida shoreline, it's a little bit shallower there. You're looking at anywhere from 84 to 86, which is long as it doesn't have anything major like wind shear wise, it's going to continue to grow. Now, bringing up that wind shear that I was mentioning, it's favorable right now. So I think it becomes a hurricane today. Will start to intensify. The yellow and the green is what you like. I hate seeing that you have all the red well beyond its center of circulation, but it does look like where it's hitting the peak water temperatures that it does hit a little bit more wind shear. So we want to see that. That's going to tear the storm apart on the upper levels, but sometimes storms are so strong that it mainly just caps it from strengthening more, doesn't really weaken it too much as it's going through its eye wall recycling stage. And the good news is it's going to fly across the state, which will limit its rainfall potential. But once it's right off the Carolina coast, as long as it doesn't do like a weird gene turn that comes back into the coast, we only have to deal with the dangerous rip currents and, of course, the initial storm surge. Here's the future cast. You're noticing that real tight rings here. This is 11 a.m. on Wednesday that it has it right outside of Tampa. And again, I don't really want to focus in on this is where it's going to make landfall. Don't think that. It can differentiate by 200 miles at this point. The cone is still so vast. But I think that we're really focusing in here on the timing that, say, if this is true, it would be like early mid-afternoon that it makes landfall on Wednesday, and then the eye wall is off the shore in 12 hours. So I think it's only going to be actually the worst of the winds in Florida for a 12-hour period. Ian was very similar to that, which did limit some of its rainfall. So that's the only good news I'm seeing here. And then once it goes out in the Atlantic, I think it kind of fades out and dies out, but you don't see a lot of rain here in the Carolinas. So that's my main point here. There's a lot of false information. When this wave formed right after Helene, they said, North Carolina, the Florida Gulf needs to be watching for another major hurricane right after Helene. There was some truth in that. There was a chance, but the cone at that point was bringing it the same direction as Helene. That's far from it, and it's still not a good situation, again, for the Tampa area and the Florida Gulf Coast. Let's start with the storm surge possibility for South Carolina. I think right now it's showing about a 1 to 3 foot storm surge is going to be a possibility, but the concern is, of course, the Florida Gulf. You're seeing over to East Point, close south of Tallahassee, 3 to 6 foot storm surge. It's showing from around Clearwater up through Tampa, 3 to 6, and then right around Cedar Key to Horseshoe Beach, where that's the place that really got hit by Imelda last year. That's where you're potentially going to have the 9 to 12 foot storm surge. And these are going to shift. These could be down further in Tampa, all the way down to, say, Siesta Key. A lot is going to change here, but that's what we're showing right now. But focusing back on our area, we actually have a really saving grace. It's a cold front that's going to move through. So the mountains looking like we're going to see a cool down. Fall's coming. So fall fans, we got good things coming for you. But I'm trying to bring it up for you. I want to show you this surface map. I always do the description pulling up the Heisman. That's exactly what this storm system is going to do. That cold front moves through down towards the south that you're about to see here on the screen. As that moves down towards the south, literally puts up one of these to the hurricane. So that's not going to prevent anything from moving through. If that wasn't there, we might have a little bit more of a pull because you have a high pressure system off the shoreline that might be able to crank up maybe more of a northerly push. So a high pressure system circulates in a clockwise form like that. So then it would kind of shift at that. But now we actually have something better counterclockwise that's kind of pushing it out that way. So we're going to have good news there. So thank goodness for this front. Before it was an upper level low and a front that was the big problem for the predecessor rain event that made Helene so bad. Moving forward, also elsewhere, our Guy Roofing 70 forecast, you can really see the sharp shift once this cold front moves through. We only have a 20% chance for rain tomorrow. I think it happens late afternoon, heading into the evening. After that, the 70s and the 50s for lows. But I do want to bring up one major thing about the recovery effort here in North Carolina. Not right away is it going to be an impact, but it's fall. It gets much cooler in the mountains because of elevation purely alone. It's usually about a week from now that we're starting to hit our peak fall foliage. Look at our lows. You're seeing this here in Banner Elk on Friday, 38 degrees. That means like the top of Beech Mountain, Grandfather Mountain, likely going to drop down below freezing. That each week that we continue through the recovery effort, there's going to be more and more of a chance of a freezing temperature. So that's one thing that's not right away. It's not going to impact us in the near term, which is good news. Just want people to kind of be mindful that that's going to be the case and scenario. So in recap, Milton is going to be a big time storm, another major hurricane that we're going to add to the 2024 hurricane season, but it is not going to impact us here in the Carolinas because we just need dry air, and that's exactly what we're going to see. I'll bring up this as my last graphic. Our rainfall chances for the Charlotte area, and this will also translate for the mountains, are as low as they can get. Beyond that 20% that I have along the mountains for the Charlotte area from that front passing on Monday, we should be dry for the next 7 to 10 days. So that's a godsend that we're seeing that. And really, again, just thinking about it, tears fill my eyes a lot of times thinking about what just happened to us. This was a generational storm. Asheville, if you've ever been there before this event, there was a lot of white lines that showed the flood of 1916. That literally the flood of 2024 knocked down some of the signs that commemorated that flood. The smashed records. And I just hope to God that we don't see anything anytime soon. But at least for the next 10 days, I can show you that we're trending in a good direction. I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy. Thanks a lot for joining me as always. Great to be here.